Hey, I'm Beth Shaha, Master Life Coach and a member of the Live Prosperous team. And I'm so excited to be chatting with you a little bit about Inside Out and Inside Out 2. This is going to be so exciting. Now, let me tell you, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen these movies, we're going to talk a little bit about them. So you're going to know more than you probably want to if you haven't seen them. So I'm just going to tell you to pause right now and go make a time to make sure that you watch them. And if you have seen them, let's go for it because there is so much that we can cover. These Pixar films do something really remarkable. They bring our emotions to life, making this abstractness concrete. It brings characters forward that help us to understand the complexities of the inner workings of our minds. And it's not just our minds that we learn about through these movies. We learn about other people's minds and how their complexities of their internal family works. And it's pretty fascinating. The cool thing is that I think both of these show concepts of real development. Science shows that there are so many relatable things that we're going to talk about today that really help us relate the growth of personality, the growth of brain development, the growth of social development that go right alongside with these movies. And they do a phenomenal job of this. If you can't tell, I absolutely adore both of these productions and believe in their power. So, we're going to uncover a little bit about how we can apply these concepts to our lives. We're going to talk about why they're so fascinating and so relatable and use that for personal healing and growth. All right. So, Inside Out One, this is kind of a story of core emotions, right? Inside Out One takes us into the mind of an 11-year-old Riley who has core emotions: joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust. And they all help her navigate through a major change. So, as a young girl, she's creating memories, right? She's skating with her family in their pond that freezes over. She gets all the attention of her parents. Her dad is a coach of her hockey team, and she's a star. They have a slower pace of life, and joy is at the helm. Riley feels safe. In fact, anything that comes up that could be, I don't know, something that's a bad memory, Joy, who is a piece of her, plucks it out and sends it off into the back of Riley's mind. She's in charge. She removes all things that could get in the way of a joyful life. In fact, at one point, she even tells Sadness, don't touch anything. Just stand right over here. And she draws a circle on the floor and says, that's your job for Riley's first day of school is to stay over there. So as long as Sadness stays put, doesn't touch any of the memories, doesn't create any new ones, then Joy can remain in control and Riley is safe. Joy says, all is great. And in the movie, she says, what could go wrong? And all of a sudden, kerplunk, you see a for sale sign put right in their yard, and you realize transition is coming. So fear sets in, crisis sets in, and all of these emotions start being very anxious about what's to come. Riley moves to a new city. We watch her emotions as they try to guide her through this unfamiliar and sometimes overwhelming territory. She has a new room, which is dark and in the attic. She starts to, Joy takes over and says, "Hey, we can do this and that with other things." She runs downstairs to get her stuff to find out the moving truck isn't going to be there. So off she goes. She's at a new school. She's called on by her teacher in the very beginning of her morning. She starts to cry in class. She feels alone. She watches people watching her, and she's really feeling this overwhelm of all these emotions. It's interesting because she starts to try out for a team and that goes awry. So all these things. And what happens at this moment is that Joy and Sadness are having this struggle back and forth and back and forth. And it leads to them getting caught into a tube, taking them to memory central of Riley's brain. Her core memories are starting to lose power. Her personalities and the islands of her mind are starting to crumble. Anger, fear, and disgust are trying to help, but nothing is working. They're used to Joy being in charge. And Riley is feeling more alone, less like herself, and can't seem to find her footing. In one scene, her mom comes in and asks her to put on a happy face and keep being their good girl. That made me cringe as I thought about all of the ways in which we ask children, our kids, or other people, or our spouse to just buck up and deal with it. Now, I do think there's something to be said about, trying to put your best foot forward. But when it's toxic positivity or it's asking us to be something that someone else wants us to be, for the good of someone else, that's not always maybe what's best for us. I think about, her dad was stressed and her mom was trying to help by saying, let's you and I make make sure that we just put on a happy face for dad. Okay, Riley says, because her core identity is that she's a good girl, right? So that goes hand in hand with that. So let me pause and say, do you know what? I've talked about this earlier, but do you know why this is so cool? All of this is that there's real science behind it. So this was directed by Pete Doctor, and also later on we'll talk about Inside Out too. But both of these, the idea for Inside Out came from Pete's observation of his own daughter's emotional changes as she grew older. He noticed how she went from being joyful and playful to more reserved, sparking the question, I wonder what is going on in her head. So Pixar and the directors consulted psychologists, Dr. Ekman, Dr. Kettner. They wanted to accurately portray how emotions work and interact inside of us. And they got it. I believe they totally got it. They also used the concept of internal family systems by that was developed by Dr. Richard Schwartz. And internal family systems, we're going to pause and learn about that for a minute. IFS, I'll call it, is a therapy that views the mind as made up of different parts, like members of an internal family. The goals of internal families are this: self leadership, the ability to hold a calm center during the inevitable storms of life, a curiosity about your inner world, and a compassion towards parts of you that are distressed. Second goal is to help extreme parts. When we have parts that are carrying a burden, how do we help release their burden so that they can come be in the internal family and be in their natural state? And the third goal is to bring harmony and healing. Our hope with internal family systems, as Richard Schwartz says, is that we want all of our parts to work together like a unified family. So you see this in Inside Out that the parts are trying to figure out how to navigate this together, but they're not really doing very well, at least in the beginning and even throughout the middle. Another really important thing about internal family systems is that all parts are welcome. So you saw Joy ostracizing sadness, right? Because that's a part that we say is not welcome. You see fear sometimes. You see anxiety or stress, things of us that we say, "Oh, I don't want that. I'm going to try and push that away. I want to suppress that." But with internal family systems, we want everyone to come forward. So what does this look like? Well, there's this big S self, and the big S self in internal family system leads, right? This is the part of us that is connected and curious and calm and compassionate. It's creative, it's has courage, it's confident, and it's clear. And the self is what leads other parts through being unburdened, and it leads the internal system. But then in the system, we don't just have the self. And this is where we see in the movie, we have protectors or managers, and they're trying to keep us safe. So exiles, which are parts of us that we're protecting from being hurt again, all of them have good intention, regardless of how they might be impacting the system. So back in Inside Out, we see that each emotion, whether it's joy or sadness or anger or fear or disgust, represents a part of Riley's internal system. Joy is like a manager always trying to keep Riley happy and in control. Fear and anger and disgust are protectors. They're trying to do good, they're trying to keep her safe from pain. And sadness, similar to an exile, is holding Riley's deeper emotions that need attention for healing. And then Inside Out 2, you'll see later, adds new emotions like anxiety. And that shows how our inner world becomes more complex as we grow. And internal family systems helps us to understand and balance these parts, just like Riley learns to accept all of her emotions. So from Inside Out 1, some key points. It is important to use our emotions as guides. They're indicators. Joy wants Riley to be happy, but sadness plays a crucial role in processing difficult experiences. Another key point is to embrace sadness, embrace the hard times. One of the central messages in this movie is that emotions are necessary, even the ones we typically avoid, like sadness. And inside out, Joy begins to see the power of sadness little by little. First, she says, "Oh, wait, you've read all the manuals," because that was a job Joy gave sadness to stay distracted so she wouldn't impact Riley's life. But sadness in reading those manuals, once Joy and sadness were back in memory land, sadness knew how to get her back. So Joy allowed sadness to be the map back to herself. Let's just stop there for a second. Imagine if we as humans said, "I'm going to allow this really hard emotion to be the map back to myself," right? What we need most is often on the other side of a really difficult emotion. But if we allow that to take us through, we allow that to be our map, the only way out is through. So Joy started to see that sadness might have something that she could offer. Then she watches as sadness shows tenderness towards Riley's imaginary friend, Bing Bong, right? And she lets sadness have a core memory and realizes that there's power in witnessing this sadness. And as Joy witnesses, we start to see Riley's emotional growth happen, and she stops suppressing her sadness and allows herself to feel it. It's a beautiful thing. And she realizes that, holy cow, if I feel this emotion, I can move through it. But if I suppress it, it holds me captive. Love it. Okay. Another key point is core memories, right? So from the very beginning, you see as Riley was born as a baby, she coos and Joy appears. And that's when Joy says, "Oh, here we are. This is my kid." And she takes it on as if this is her job, right? And our core memories begin the day we're born. That is true to us. And Riley's memories, they'll influence her personality and emotional reactions, reminding us that our experiences build who we are. And that's just like you and me. This is how it happens. And these core memories are ours until we start to jostle with them and start to realize we have a say in what this looks like. And that comes later too. So, key takeaways from Inside Out. It's a reminder to embrace our emotions. It's a reminder to say we can connect deeply with others and grow through challenges if we embrace even the tough emotions. And it also helps us to stop and remember, just like Joy, we value each emotion. And when we do that, we can achieve this more balanced emotional life. And when our biggest self is in charge, harmony and healing starts to take over. And just one kind of fun point. I don't know if you noticed, but in the end, well, I should stop. In the beginning of the movie, you see that each of the memories that are put out there in the little balls are very distinct colors. You see blue and green and red and yellow, and they're all distinct colors. But by the end, they start to become like a multicolored marble almost, as if different pieces have impacted each other so that they can work as a team. This is that family. This is that harmony. This is them coming together and working together. So that's when they start to realize that there's a healthy thing going on, and it's a place of rest. And that is where we see Inside Out 1 coming to an end. Okay, so take a deep breath there. Inside Out 2. Okay, so this is a deeper dive into the mind. And this is where Riley becomes a teenager. And in the very beginning, a beautiful, beautiful scene happens where Joy invites sadness to journey with her to the land of core memories. Now, this isn't the other memory area they were in. This is the core memories, the one that Joy would never let sadness go to. And she is the only one that was never invited there. So she takes her hand and together they walk. So from the very beginning, you see that they're trying to show this sense of togetherness with these emotions, these basic emotions. And Riley is, to use a term, she's securely attached at this point. She's attached to her parents. She's attached to this core memories. And the sense of self is coming from that, and it feels really healthy. She's starting to see who she is. She's starting to feel that a mix of good and bad memories help her to be who she is. And this is where that scene is, where you see these beautiful lines going down into the pool. And as they strum along them, it makes beautiful music. And you see how some of them aren't so great memories, but some of them are great, and how together they make up this beautiful core self that Riley carries in. And this is the calm before the storm. Why? Because puberty hits, right? And so the director, Kelsey Mann, of this movie says he envisioned a wrecking ball, even a long time ago when he created Inside Out 1, that this wrecking ball was going to come and obliterate all of headquarters. And that's what they did. So all goes crazy. Puberty hits. The entire mind starts to rewire, and you can just watch it in that scene. The control board all of a sudden has many buttons. It's so sensitive. As they start to rebuild, they're realizing that, there's so much more to our command center, right? And this is exactly what happens in puberty. And science shows that our feelings become stronger and we have more of them. And during puberty, though, we've been given all of this, but we don't know how to make sense of it all. We pretty much, we're experiencing adult emotions and feel so out of control until over time we learn to manage them. But we don't see that in Riley yet, right? So we watch Riley. She's trying out a new school, trying out a new team. She's saying goodbye to old friends. She's feeling so much conflict. And with this, these new emotions and digging deeper into the complexities of her growth and growing up show up. Introduce anxiety. Anxiety is this orange, anxious looking little person, this part of her. Even anxiety's presence even turns the entire console orange, which shows you the impact that anxiety can have over an entire system. So Riley becomes more impulsive, sporadic, a bit crazed. New emotions come forward. And so with anxiety, we see envy, we see embarrassment, we see ennui, which is kind of this bored, sarcastic, teenage laying on the couch kind of character, right? And Joy is completely blindsided, very concerned, wondering what the heck is going on. And in this moment of them all interacting, we watch how quickly fear and anxiety become fast friends. Hey, we're going to be able to be together in this. And you see sadness and embarrassment relate. And all of a sudden, the team is looking to anxiety to lead because everyone is frantic. No one knows what's going on. They're not looking to the big S self. Riley's not even figured that out yet. They're looking to each other. And the only person that they feel like can deal with this is anxiety, because anxiety comes in and says, I got this. I can come up with all the reasons why we should be worried, all the reasons why things could go wrong. And all of a sudden wants to take a leadership role. But like two parents who mean really well, talking about how to raise a child, right? This is kind of that feeling of joy and anxiety. They both mean well. And remember, in IFS, all parts mean well, even if they're being destructive, and all parts are welcome. So you watch this tension over joy and anxiety, and they really want to take care of Riley. And these parts polarize, and that creates craziness within the system, right? Riley's sense of self is becoming faded and confusing, and she's also very willing to be something that she's not, so that she could be liked, right? And we've all had a moment like this. There's so many things out there in the world. You've watched Breakfast Club, where they have these personas that they're trying to hold until after spending a day in detention, they realize they're more alike than they are different. You see Mean Girls. That's a theme in that, right? Where there's a group of girls that that are asking this woman to be a part of their group, but she's got these other friends and she turns on them. We see these kinds of things all the time. My favorite is Johnny and Sandy. I'm sorry, Danny and Sandy from Greece. When he sees her for the first time after they've been together for the summer and they're back at school, and he acts like he has no idea who she is and it was just a fling. And he's like, yeah, we rocking and rolling and whatnot. And she's like, Danny, you're faking a phony, and I wish you never laid eyes on me, or something like that, right? It's that point where Danny Zuko wanted to show his boys that I'm cool and I don't need this chick. But it was against his real desire of loving her. He really, really liked her, and it hurt her feelings. But then so does Sandy try to fit in with the pink ladies later, by doing the sleepover because she wants to fit in because she's trying to navigate this new school and possibly Danny Zuko, right? So we see this all over the place. But it happens in our own lives. It happens to me. It happens where we're willing to do something maybe against our true self. Again, to gain respect or friends, or maybe just feel a little safe for temporarily safe. And it's interesting because I feel like this internal battle remains through this movie with Riley. She's self-conscious, she's more self-aware, she self-judges a lot more, she second guesses herself so much, and anxiety takes all the other emotions and puts them in a bottle, literally, and suppresses them. They become suppressed emotions. So, in Inside Out, key points, we see new emotions. We meet them in a way that expresses how we have an added complexity once we reach adolescence and even go through adulthood. And it's a reminder that as we grow, so do our emotional experiences. So we're going to have to go through what we grow through. No, grow through what we go through, right? That's what we're going to have to do with this. Another point is the movie touches on the themes of identity and self doubt, as I said, and the pressure to fit in. And as Riley struggles with this, we see her emotions evolve, and she starts to have an emotional landscape, and it shifts during these different stages. So we're going to feel that through adolescence and identity, and even as we transition in different parts of our life. The third key point that I took from this one is this concept of balancing emotions. So just like in the first movie, the sequel emphasizes this importance of balancing them even when they're in conflict. So I like to look at it this way. So we begin to use our emotions to move through in healthy ways. Like we might feel embarrassed at times. And so we'll curb ourselves because we care about others and we didn't mean to hurt feelings, or we care about social norms. And obviously, extremely worried about what other people think or social norms isn't healthy. But there's a sense of grounding that comes from feeling emotions that keep us in check in a healthy way, and we just are considerate. So sometimes if we feel embarrassed by how we've shown up, the alter or the other side of that could be, okay, next time I'm going to be a little more considerate. So this balance is helpful. So when we think of envy, well, envy can encourage us to reach higher. It can encourage us to be inspired and try something new. We might see somebody doing something and think, I want to do that. Right. So envy isn't always a bad thing when in check, but it is something that could be productive for us. Fear. Fear keeps Riley safe from what she can see, and then anxiety keeps her safe from what she can't see. Right? So we don't want fear and anxiety to rule or paralyze us. But with a little bit of that, we can prepare for what's to come. Take, for instance, an interview. You don't want to be so afraid that you don't know how to speak in an interview, but a little bit of that anxiety might say, I've got to be a little more prepared for this. What questions could they ask? What do I want to ask? And all of a sudden, we get that little buzz in our belly of preparedness that anxiety helped us create. And then it gives us the edge we need to nail it, right? Same as performance on a field, same as, anywhere out there, right? Like it gives us a little bit. But again, we don't want it to absolutely paralyze us. We want to use it. So this is a really key point from Inside Out too, where we're starting to use these emotions even if they're difficult. Uh, I do need to talk about, though, the anxiety panic attack. So, if you watch this, I thought this was a moment where I felt it too. I don't know about you, but when that all was spinning, which we'll get to and talk about in a second, I was with it, right? Like I felt like I was in it. And you see what's happening is anxiety is just trying to create this new self to impress. And she plans harder and works harder. And she even has all the little boys in the basement in their little cubicles coming up with anything that could go wrong. She's on overdrive. She works 24/7. And Riley's bright sense of self goes from I'm a good person to I'm not good enough. This is a very dramatic scene. Anxiety, even at one point, asks, what have I done? This tornado of anxiety takes over. And I felt it, like I said, in the theater. I felt like we were all a part of this. And this, and even anxiety, she's in the middle of it. She's at the center, and one tear comes down. I felt that. I felt that so hard for any moment that I have felt that anxiety, as I've watched other people go through panic attacks, as I've experienced them or heard about them, all of that, that was a moment that I think a lot of people could relate to in that movie. It pretty much showed how anxiety sometimes, even with best intentions, can go awry. And all of a sudden, Joy sees anxiety for the first time as just another part of Riley. I think Joy is less now threatened by Riley, and she says, wow, maybe this isn't something we need to control or stop, but we can help prepare and handle this. And this is when we become aware that maybe life will throw us things and we can't control them, but we can trust ourselves that we have the tools and we have the strength to move through it. I have a teenage daughter that just moved into college. She's been there a full week. And I just told her this yesterday. Remember, you have the tools and the strength to deal with this. It's just a new thing that you're dealing with. So life will continue to throw things our way that feel unfamiliar. A new school, a new job, retirement, all these things come our way. And we just have to remember, oh, yeah, I've been through something like this before. I have what it takes. This is going to be hard. It's going to be hell. The only way out is through. And that is where we start to realize we can respect these emotions. We can be grateful for these emotions and we can have them, we can help, they can help us by guiding us through situations and circumstances that come. So we become more aware, right? Like we say something, we're like, yeah, that was a dumb thing to say. Or, man, I was really anxious in that conversation. Like my heart started to race and I started to feel hot. I wonder why. Like we start to get more curious towards ourselves when we have this balance. And then we start to prep ahead of time. Like we know if a person or a situation makes you feel stress, like we think, okay, how can I be proactive the next time? What do I need to do? So, we see in Inside Out 2, anxiety tries to dismantle Riley to keep her safe from feeling bad. It's combining this good and bad memories that we see Riley's sense of self becomes truly authentic. It is no longer what her caregivers gave her. It is no longer what anxiety was creating, but it's this beautiful combination of, okay, sometimes I might feel selfish, but I'm a pretty kind person. Or although I sometimes fall short, I actually am good and I do a lot of things really well. It takes all these limiting beliefs and says, okay, sometimes they're true, but most of the time, I am who I am. And it's that self compassion, growth, healing, and harmony that takes the forefront. All right, so Inside Out 2. It teaches us that growing means learning to manage all these emotions. And you see Riley doing that. It talks about the complexities of adolescence, but even adulthood, and recognizing that we are growing and we're going to continue to have these things thrown our way. And we're continuing to mold ourselves into a person that has a prosperous life, right? That's what we're doing. We're all in this humaning. So, how do we apply these to our lives? I've given you a couple examples, but um, a couple things we can do is embrace emotional complexity, right? We have a range of emotions that guide us through life and they're there on purpose. And recognize and ask yourself, how can I listen to my emotions? And what are they trying to tell me? Sometimes when I'm feeling some anxiety or I'm feeling some fear, I will literally stop and let my biggest self ask, who is talking? Who needs my attention? And I'll have a little conversation with that person, that part of me, that emotion that's happening. And I want to know, what are you worried about? Right? When we become the self, we have an eagle eye perspective and we are listening and learning from the part. Once that part feels seen and heard, oftentimes we can talk them down from the ledge. And then they don't have to blend with us and make us feel that. So ask yourself, how can I listen to my emotions and what are they trying to tell me? And don't be afraid to ask the question that I ask every day, who's talking? Because sometimes I want them to stop. Also, remember that we can heal through our emotions. These films show that when we allow ourselves to really feel our emotions, that's when healing comes. You see this when Riley finally lets down and tells her parents how she's feeling. They realize, wow, you're right. We miss it too. We love you. We want to be a part of this with you. And all of a sudden they come, but it's not until sadness was able to come forward that friends and family were able to support her, right? So instead of resisting our emotions, what if we allowed ourselves to sit in them? I've been sitting in my emotions all week as I dropped my daughter off at college. I mean, I've been sitting in it because it's important to feel what I'm feeling because I'll be okay. We'll get through it. She'll be okay. I have things to look forward to, but all of this allowing of that emotion allows for deeper healing. The other thing is both inside out films provide a window into how our emotions can influence our actions and decisions. And when we become more aware of these emotional states, we make more intentional choices. And that's really important to know that our emotions don't actually need to dictate what we do, they're just information, they're just indicators. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by anger, it might be a signal to address an underlying issue rather than react impulsively. So just something to think about. So I encourage you, as you maybe rewatch these or you think about it, take some time to do some self reflection. Which emotion? Maybe it's something from the movie that you saw, or maybe it's something totally new within you. Uh, which one dominates your mind? And then how do they influence your relationships or your job or your daily living? Right? Because as you reflect on that emotional landscape, you're able to have insight that will help you to better understand yourself. Also, mindfulness is a really important thing. Practice it. When we observe our emotions without judgment and we just say, huh, isn't that interesting? Kind of like when we used to watch Sesame Street and a word would come above and they would just kind of look at it and with curiosity talk about it or a number, right? That's kind of what it is like. It's like if we have a thought, let it come up, let an emotion come up, notice it without judgment. Notice Noticing is the first piece, right? And they will give us valuable insight if we're willing to listen. The other thing that's important that I learned is that the more that we learn about ourselves and we are empathetic towards ourselves, we're able to do that for other people. Brene Brown wrote Atlas of the Heart, and it is all about learning vocabulary about emotions so that you can better understand yourself, so you could better understand others. And the moment that I learned about internal family systems, the moment that I've watched Inside Out, I'm like, wow, this goes on in everybody. So imagine if a really angry part of me is talking to a really angry part of a coworker and they're going at it, right? That's not a healthy situation, right? If our biggest selves are talking to each other and we say, wow, this kind of makes me feel angry, or I'm feeling a little angry over here, but I want to work on it, right? Like that's where healthy conflict resolution happens. So when we understand that everyone's emotions are valid, it helps us to become more compassionate. So, can you tell that I love these movies? Can you tell that I think that the producers nailed it? They really are powerful tools for helping us understand ourselves and others. And I hope you enjoyed them, right? We can apply this to our lives and use this, right? We're all humaning, as I said, and this is our journey towards emotional well being. This is what it's about. And Inside Out and Inside Out too, totally worthy of watching and passing along. Take care, y'all.